Good evening.
Good evening.
Welcome to the Fairport Museum. It's lovely to see so many people in green tonight. My name is Vicki Profit. I'm the director of the Fairport Museum and president of the Perinton Historical Society, so welcome on behalf of them. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. We do have exits if there is any kind of emergency. We've got an exit out the back with a lit sign. You go out there to the left. There's another door in the hallway that has an exit sign. You go up there to the right. And you could also go up the stairs same way you came in. So we've got some exciting things going on. Did any of you have a chance to attend our game day at the museum? Yes, Jane, I saw you. That was fun. And you did as well. Thank you. We reopened the museum for the season on March 7th, and we had such a fantastic group come for our very first family game time. And it was in honor of our former Perinton Historical Society President Clark King, who was also mayor of Fairport for more than almost 2 decades, amazingly. And Clark passed away last year, and anyone who knows Clark knows he was an avid game player. So we were very fortunate to have Clark's granddaughter Kelsey here, and she loaned us some of his very special games. So if you haven't had a chance to check those out in the atrium upstairs, those are on exhibit through April 30th. Our next presentation coming up is Tuesday, April 19th. It will happen April 21st. Thank you, Marlene. You can always keep me on track. April 21st, skip the 19th thing, April 21st, and Professor Tim Nealon from Nazareth University will be here to talk about the American Revolution and how it created Rochester. So we're very excited about that. Our next one after that, May 19th, here, I knew there was a 19 in there somewhere. That will be Tammy Poynan-Grimes, who is the captain of our own Fairport Colonial Belle boat, and she will be here talking about her family's business. So I hope you can join us for that. And then we're already to our member event in June. So if you are not a Perinton Historical Society member, we would love to welcome you. We have very reasonable rates, and we have a lot of fun. We do about 9 programs a year. We do lots of special events. So I hope you would consider joining us. And if you're interested in that, please see me or Jim, our membership chair, who's sitting at the back after the program. So our speaker this evening, how fortunate are we that during Women's History Month, we get someone talking about a woman, and we get someone who's talking about an Irish woman on March 17th. I thought that was a stroke of genius on my part, so
Good job, Vicki.
you're welcome. I was so excited when I said, wait a minute. And I had the pleasure of meeting our speaker last summer at a special reception that was held in Fairport, thanks to Denise. And she just has written the most incredible book that ties the history of an Irish woman coming to the United States and somehow manages to tie Frederick Douglass and some of these other local people into this fictional account. And it's really a lot of fun. So I am very pleased to welcome Marilyn Higgins. And following her talk, she will be signing copies of her book that are available for $20. So please welcome Marilyn.
Thank you. That was great. What a great museum this is. You guys are lucky. I've done 69 presentations all across upstate New York. Wow. I think this is the coolest museum I've seen. I really do. I love it. The woman who brought me here to the condos to do last summer, her name is Maureen Sullivan. And she's somewhere in a Hibernian club right now, I can tell you. I think she's in Florida. But it is wonderful to be here. I am also Irish, and you'll pick that up when you read my book. There's a lot of Irish flavor in this book. So just here at the beginning, what I'm going to do is play this little trailer, if I can. Can you hear that all right?
Yep.
Okay. There we go. That's the story in a nutshell. Could you read it? Okay, good. I'm Marilyn Higgins. I wanted to write a book all my life. When I was 70, I sat down and started doing it. It took me 3.5 years to write it. My dad grew up, his family were Irish tenant farmers on a farm overlooking the Erie Canal. And when I was about 8 years old, he took me to the farm and walked me around and showed me this big contraption that they used to pull down the hill from the farm to the canal, and they would cut ice out, and they would pack it in sawdust, and then drag it back up the hill to the ice house to keep their food okay. And I don't know what it was, something about that particular thing stuck in here. You know how we have these childhood memories that just bing? And I fell in love with the Erie Canal from that point on. And I am what you would call an unabashed Erie Canal addict. I have read every book on the canal. I have been to every boat that you can go on the canal. I love the Erie Canal. Along with my friend Peter, I sit on the Erie Canal Heritage Corridor Board and have for, how many years have we been doing this, Pete? 25 years. I worked with then Congressman Jim Walsh on getting the canal labeled as Erie Canal National Heritage Corridor, which has made a huge difference in upstate New York. So I always wanted to write a book. And so when I was in high school, they told me I wasn't college material. So I, So I went to this community college, Auburn Community College, which was the single most magnificent thing I've ever done in my life. SUNY. I never give a talk without, thank you, SUNY. Without the State University of New York, I don't know where myself or my brothers and sisters would be. Blue-collar kids could go to college for $250 a semester, wait on tables, and figure out how to get a college education in those days, thanks to SUNY. And I'm very dedicated to it. After that, I went to Oswego State University. And then, we got another Oswego person over there. And after that, I worked in a number of really, really interesting jobs. But it seems like my jobs always took me back to the canal. So for a long time, I worked for Niagara Mohawk, which was the best job I ever had. I was their vice president of economic development. So I was on this thruway, up and down the thruway, Buffalo, Adirondack, Southern Tier, meeting with little towns and villages like Fairport, and meeting with their mayors and their town councilmen in their little diners. And they always told me a story. Always, it went back to the Erie Canal. This was invented here because of the Erie Canal. This family started here because of the Erie Canal. All up and down. So that fed my addiction on the canal. Later, I worked for Syracuse University. I've had a lot of really wonderful positions. But when I look back on the Niagara Mohawk days, that really fed my interest in the canal. Now, I will tell you the story of where I decided to write this book, however. My sisters and I have 2 sisters and 2 brothers. My 2 sisters and I decided after my dad passed away, that we would take an open road experience to Europe. Not just to Ireland, but all over Europe. And so we did. We flew over and we rented a car. We had no hotel reservations, nothing. Driving along, we ended up at some point in a town called Garmisch-Partenkirchen. Have you ever heard of it? Someone has heard of it. It's a town in the Alps, okay, in the German Alps, way, way up in the Alps. And no one spoke a word of English there. This was not a touristy town. And we didn't speak a word of German. And so we found this place to stay, and the woman pointed us like this. This is where we could go get some food, right? So my two sisters and I walked into this place, and it was like one of those movies where the guys are singing with the mugs. Table after table. We're like this. They sat us down with 12 German bowlers. They spoke no English. We spoke no German. He called the waitress over. She came with this long wooden thing with 15 shots of their local liqueur. That was his effort toward us, with a little American flag in every shot glass. And then I'm trying to do something similar, to reach out to them, and I start singing. I've got a mule and her name is Sal. They all knew the song.
Really?
Here we are in the Alps with these Germans. Their ancestors came to America this way. 7 million immigrants came along this canal that is your village, right? 7 million immigrants. So I won't go into it all, but by the end of the evening, we're all, I've got a mule and her name is Sal. And we had the whole place singing the Erie Canal song, which was really quite wonderful. But my sisters laughed to this very day because we walked out that night and I said, I'm writing that book. I am writing that book, because at some point I am writing that book. And that's where I decided to do it. Now, all of you being from Fairport know that the Erie Canal changed New York. You know that New York City wouldn't have been New York City if it weren't for the Erie Canal. One of the things I find very interesting is that the two ports that were really vying for business at the time were New Orleans and New York. And if not for the canal, it's very likely New Orleans could have been the premier port. And how might the Civil War have turned out if that had been the case? Because ideas follow commerce. They always have. Immigrants, ideas, innovation, always. The Erie Canal changed New York, and upstate New York changed the world. And this is one of my pet peeves. People don't know our history. We don't have movies. We don't have musicals. We don't have enough books written about us. And you know what? It's amazing, the history that happened here. You know that, otherwise you wouldn't be a part of this organization. But I never cease to be amazed at how little people know about this little piece of the world, this upstate New York along the corridor. I mean, synthetic penicillin was invented here. Electricity was invented here. I mean, things that changed the world happened along our little corridor of upstate New York. Now, it did leave an indelible mark on our history, and there's a lot of nonfiction books written about the canal, some very, very good ones. My favorite nonfiction is Wedding of the Waters by Bernstein. It's magnificent. But I always thought, if you're academic, you tend to read those books, but if you're not, they don't get a lot of distribution. So I had this idea that I would make up a story and put it with the real history. And maybe that would get the real history out further. Because I have a pet peeve. My pet peeve is how little known our history is. When I went to see the movie Harriet Tubman, they had about 2 minutes that took place in Auburn. Auburn is magnificent. Auburn's got more history than 90% of the places in the country, and it had about 2 minutes in Auburn. It is a great frustration to me. So history inspires people, and it inspired Aileen O'Malley. Aileen is an Irish immigrant. She's 18 years old. She thinks she knows it all. Most 18-year-olds do, right? She is extremely Catholic. Her grandma raised her. and Betha Dooley, and there was nothing but Catholicism in her mind, okay? She was raised in a pretty favored status for a Catholic in Ireland at the time. But nonetheless, she was very, very dogmatic and closed-minded. Now, if you're going to write a book about a period of time, there isn't a better period of time than 1825 to 1861 in upstate New York. It's just such a little period of time. I mean, I'm 74 now, so that's like nothing, right? That's just like nothing. But when you think of what happened here in that little period of time, you had the canal opening in 25, and I know you guys know your canal history, so I'm not going to burn you with it. I'm not going to go over too much of that. You know about the burned over district? For those of you who don't, this strip along the canal was called the burned over district. And that is because most of the immigrants who came here came from Europe, and they had Calvinistic religious beliefs. They thought their future was preordained. And that's the religion they came from. Various religions, but that's what they thought. Then they figured after crossing the ocean and coming up the Hudson River, well, maybe they could figure some of this out for themselves. So you had this explosion of religious fervor that happened right along this little corridor of ours, okay? So that you got the Mormons, you got the Shakers, you got the Millerites. Have you ever heard of the Millerites? Oh my God, thousands of people were Millerites. He told them the world was going to end on a certain day. He was one of those guys, you know. The funny thing, he had thousands of followers, thousands. And then when that day came and the world didn't end, he pushed it off for a year. And people still followed him. In the woods, you would find these revivals with Charles Grandison Finney, who I think came here. They didn't have cars, you know, but several thousand people in the woods for 6 days, singing and praying and dancing. This was the burned over district. It was burning with religious experimentation and fever. You also had, up here, you had the natives being pushed off their land. Now, I have a lot of faith and love in the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and one of my best friends was Joanne Shenandoah. I don't know if you ever heard of her. Very well-known Native American songstress, and she was an Oneida. So in my book, I focus on the Oneidas in terms of the Confederacy. But it was Jacksonian Indian removal time, and the Indians were being pushed off their lands. The Oneidas were being pushed to Wisconsin. And, wait a minute, didn't mean to do that, okay. And then you had these cities just exploding onto the scene. Like this, like Rochester, like Syracuse, like, you know. And really, it was just dollars and cents. If it used to cost you $100 to send your cheese to New York City, now it costs you $5. It reduced transportation costs by 95%. And that's where these cities came from that boom. Now, you also had, in upstate New York, you had slave catchers. People forget we did have slavery in New York State. And there were slave catchers. Here you had the Irish famine going on. I have in my book a story of her stepsister and brother who were kidnapped and brought here. Now, people thought that was kind of unusual. You know, we hear a lot about child trafficking. Child trafficking was common then. People would take their children down to the wharf in Cork. They were starving. They couldn't feed them. And they would sell them to the boat captain. The boat captain would take them across to America, line them up on the wharf, and farmers from upstate New York would go down there and bid on them. And they would come and work for 3 or 4 years, depending on what the agreement was. This was commonplace. Something I didn't know until I started working on this book was that there were black farming communities across upstate New York. I was fortunate to meet a 7th grade history teacher named Jessica, and I told her what I was writing, and she said, come on with me, I'm going to show you something. And she took me to this place called Florence, where with her students from 7th grade, they were doing an archaeological dig of this Florence, this black farming community. It had 80 successful black farms. And there are 7 or 8 of these all across upstate New York. And they were funded by one of my heroes, Gerrit Smith. Have you ever heard of him? Probably not. He was very shy. He didn't want any attention to himself. And he was, without any question, the most powerful abolitionist in the United States of America. His father was in business with John Jacob Astor. He inherited a lot of money. And once he figured out that he was going to be an abolitionist, nothing got in his way. He funded Frederick Douglass's North Star newspaper. He funded John Brown's raid. He was behind this abolitionist movement, every bit of it. And he lived in a little town that's about 6 miles from my hometown. It's called Peterborough. And I encourage you, if you've never been there, another little upstate New York jewel, the National Abolition Hall of Fame is there. And Gerrit Smith's home burned down, but his land office is still there. And all of these people met him in his land office. Harriet Tubman, Frederick, they were all there, which is part of why I wrote this book too. These people knew each other. I like to imagine them all getting on the same canal boat, because it could have happened. They knew each other. They went to the same meetings, and we forget that. And it happened here. It happened in upstate New York. And of course, you had the massive immigration. And if you've read diaries of people along the canal, a boat would go by and everyone would be speaking Norwegian, and the next boat would go by and everybody would be speaking French. And it just went on and on. The immigration on the canal was magnificent. So all of those societal things created movements. And that's really where all this came from. The women's suffrage movement, you know, Seneca Falls, you know Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Well, did you know that they got their ideas for women's suffrage from the Haudenosaunee women? A wonderful historian named Sally Roche Wagner, who recently passed away, I have so much regard for her, really did this research. And Matilda Jocelyn Gage and Elizabeth Cady Stanton went to the Oneida tribes, and they saw how women were treated in the Oneidas, and they went, wait a minute, they can't go to war unless the women approve. You know, there was no wife beating, okay? You would be thrown out of your community before you could bat an eye. And it was the women who chose the leaders. They chose the chiefs because they knew them from when they were little children. And the feeling was they knew the character of the people. So when these women from this Western tradition were exposed, I mean, Matilda Jocelyn Gage even got inducted into the Oneidas as a Wolf Clan member. And many of the ideas from the women's suffrage movement came from there. And then, of course, you had Frederick Douglass right up in Rochester. You had these utopian experiments going on. Again, 7 or 8 of these communities across upstate New York. I focus on the Oneida community because they're close to me, but also they're really interesting. Have you guys ever heard of them?
Oh, yeah.
Free love, blah, 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 you know, very controversial. There are still descendants living there from the original. Yeah, it's a wonderful place. It's another place to visit if you haven't been there. So it had these utopian experiments. And then in 1861, you've got the beginning of the Civil War. So many of the problems we have today, the roots were planted in the furrow then. Now, in my book, you'll recognize some characters, because I use them from real life. Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, Gerrit Smith, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Stephen Myers. Not as many people know about Stephen, so I'll say a minute about him. He's from Albany. His home, he and his wife's home is on Livingston Avenue in Albany. He was the first African-American steamboat captain on the Hudson River. And he brought contraband up the Hudson in barrels and to freedom. Very interesting man. He also started Florence. He was one of the, Gerrit Smith called upon him to come and get families to come to Florence. That's what I forgot to mention. The other reason Gerrit Smith did these black farming communities is you had to own land in order to vote. So that's why he did this. And then, of course, you had Ulysses S. Grant right up in Sackett's Harbor at the same time. So like I say, I like to think of them all getting on the same canal boat. But they knew each other, and they were here at the same time. So then I created a story, and I created characters to go with those people. Now, you have Aileen up there. She's Black Irish. You have Jedediah. You've got to have a little love story, right? You can't have a book without a little bit of love story. So Jedediah is the love interest. You have Betha Dooley, who is the grandmother. My favorite character in the book reminds me of my own grandmother, Anna Quigley. Joseph Ryan is the scoundrel. Doesn't he look like a scoundrel? Oh, he's got the mustache, the whole bit. Jimmy, who was my friend Marianne's husband's favorite character in this book. Viney, Rose, her Protestant friend, who she met on the boat coming over, who took care of her when she got sick, who made her think, oh my God, maybe Protestants aren't awful. Right? Opened her mind. And then Leah, who was the daughter, one of the Oneida daughters, and is named after Joanne's real daughter, Leah Shenandoah. So I have been in economic development most of my life. So when I finished writing the book, Peter, I think, bought the second book that I sold. I wanted more people to come to upstate New York, to places like this, and to see where my story unfolds. So I wrote this book, this little pamphlet, and it's called Immerse Your Book Club in Upstate New York, and it is all about the wonderful places here and ways to experience different parts of my book in these places. So, for example, I was invited to come down and speak at the Hudson River Maritime Museum in Kingston. Do you know they have real steamboats that still go up the Hudson River? No. You can take my book and go on a steamboat, okay? It's very cool. Of course, my little hometown of Canastota, we do something now called the Abolition Walk every year. We reenact that scene in my book. And we have a little brewery that Marianne knows well, too. And they made a special beer for us. It's called the Abolition Ale. Now, Chittenden Falls is interesting. Have any of you ever been there? Yeah. Oh, you have? Oh, I love seeing that. When I was in 8th grade, my best friend Mary Snyder and I were crawling around, and we fell off Chittenden Falls. Oh. We landed on one of these ledges halfway in, and they had to come with like a crane to get us. I was in 8th grade, and I was chubby even then, so you can imagine how embarrassing that was. But Chittenden Falls is a very special place to me. And I think the most emotional scene in my book takes place in Chittenden Falls, and it's with the clan mothers. I had the very great opportunity to meet with a group of clan mothers 40 years ago, and something I'll never forget. And I tried to recreate that in that scene of the book as best I could. In Casanova, you can go to the place where they had the Fugitive Slave Convention, which was an amazing thing. And this is the Oneida Community Mansion House. Plays a big role in my book. Gorgeous. You can stay there. I never did. It always seemed a little creepy to me. Have you stayed there? Yeah, it's nice, right? Yeah.
We had a meeting there.
Oh, there we go. It's a very cool place.
Where is it?
It's sort of south of Oneida, just south of the city of Oneida, in Sherrill, it's called. Matilda Jocelyn Gage's home is right in Fayetteville. The Erie Canal Museum in Syracuse. There's so many places to get out on the water, not the least of which is Fairport, of course. But I encourage people to bring my book and get out on the water. I really had fun. Pittsford, they took me out on those boats, and the guy was playing the banjo, and I got to talk about my book. It was really fun. And of course, Seneca Falls. Now, there's a scene in my book, if any of you have read it yet, where Aileen and her daughter make sand maps of their lives. So here's Ireland, there's the trip to New York, etc. And I encourage people to come up to the eastern side of Lake Ontario, where I'm fortunate to have a cottage. And they're the most beautiful sandy beaches. They're just amazing. And make a sand map of your own life. Oswego, where's my Oswego buddy? Yeah. Well, when we were there, it was a dump, okay? A lot of good bars, but you should see this place now. If you haven't been there lately, go. They had a young mayor, this guy named Billy Barlow. Never met him, God bless him. He turned that place around. That city is hopping. It's got beautiful restaurants. They opened the whole town up to the waterfront. It's really beautiful. Auburn, of course, the Seward Mansion. I love history. I can tell you people love history. I go to historic houses whenever I travel. But most historic houses, what happened is they sold the house, they sold all the belongings, and then they slowly gathered them back and turned them into a museum. Not there. That has all the original stuff. The Emancipation Proclamation in Lincoln's handwriting with Seward's notes is in that building. It's remarkable. So really the theme of my book is what she says to her daughter at the very end, which is she urges her to use her good mind, her strong constitution, and her sensitive heart to the task of making this a better land. And that seems particularly appropriate right now.
Yeah. Amen.
So it's kind of my love letter to upstate New York. Celebrated the 200th anniversary of the canal last year, had a ball doing it. Brought a bunch of foreign visitors up to the World Canal Conference. God, that was fun. It's my love letter to upstate New York. That's my book. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Yes,
My sister-in-law lives in Canastota,
my town.
and she was the head of the museum there for a while.
Ah,
And I was shocked about all the things that were invented in Canastota. Could you remind us of all those things?
oh my God, all kinds of wagons that had never existed before. The Industrial Revolution would never have happened without those wagons. The cut glass, I mean, they had a cut glass factory that was innovative, 100 years before its time. Just amazing, amazing stuff. There were a couple different engines there that went on boats that were invented there. Outboard motors, excuse me, they were invented there. What else? My friend, the local historian, would be mad at me for not knowing more of these. But that story is true all up and down the canal. All these little towns and villages have these inventions that served the world that came out of our part of the world.
It's a great museum.
It is. Nancy Pulverenti, is that her name? No? Shirley, okay.
Can you tell about what happened to that little chunk of the canal that's in front of the museum? What happened that really shut down Canastota?
New York State decided to reroute the canal. And that was, I think, 1924. And so there was a part of the canal, including Canastota, which got bypassed. Yeah. And the boats went across the Oneida Lake instead. Oh, yes. And, it made sense at the time, but we're going to bring our little canal back, though. We're going to do it somehow. Yes?
You said on this strip were the Shakers and what strip, what towns? And cities?
Oh, like if you were to start from Troy, which is kind of what my book covers, go Albany, Troy, Waterville, that area,
All those
and then come all along
mentions?
Utica, Canajoharie, Little Falls, Dolgeville, all these little towns. Then you'll get to Canastota, then you'll get to Syracuse, and then you go to Weedsport, you go to Port Byron, then you go that way, then you come here, then you go all the way to Buffalo.
Oh, so they were all over. I thought you meant just a certain.
No, just that. It was about, the whole canal was 363 miles, is that right? But most of the people lived within 150 miles of each other. Yeah.
So could we go to any of the areas and see any museums, or you said some of them are still practicing?
Oh, yes. You can go right on my website, MarilynHigginsAuthor.com, and you can download this book for free. And it will tell you all the places, the museums, the historic houses, everything. And it's a wonderful time. Yeah.
Well, last year, summer, at our book club, we usually would go for lunches, and we went to canal-side lunches.
Oh,
across
yeah.
New York State.
Nice.
Oh, my gosh, the towns were just.
Aren't they wonderful? Yeah. Yeah. I love them too. Mm. Yes.
You mentioned the five, the Native Americans being moved to Wisconsin. I mean, we were out west and we heard about the Vale of Tears and all of that.
Yeah.
But I'm not afraid anymore to show my ignorance.
Don't be.
The story I haven't heard is about the Native Americans in this area going to Wisconsin. Can you just speak about it? It's got me really curious.
Sure.
I don't remember that story.
They started taking their land, okay? And they, especially the Oneidas, they did not legally have the right to that land. This Treaty of Canandaigua did not give them the right to that land. But New York State said, we don't care, we're going to do it anyway. So they started taking their land, and then they started offering them incentives to go out there. And they created, just Jackson did this all over, they created a reservation for them out there. And then a few people started to go, and then a few more, and then a few more. And it wasn't, the trip wasn't as brutal as the Trail of Tears. That was really terrible. But the sadness was just as great. They were leaving the burial grounds of their ancestors. I mean, that was horrible for them. And sometimes they're in touch, too. But I should also say this. I got to know a good number of Haudenosaunee quite well, and they didn't hate the canal. A lot of people will write letters and say, you know, it killed us, it destroyed us, it's stuff. Most of the Native Americans that I spoke to about the canal, they had the pain, like there is in history, right? Everything is good and bad, right? But they also liked the canal. They got jobs on the lumber boats. They took the canal to see people from other tribes. You know, they used it too. And so it wasn't like it was all bad, which I think some people give that impression today. When we did, as Peter knows, when we did the relaunch of the Seneca Chief, the night before we went up on Seneca Bluffs, and the Seneca Indians came with the Buffalo Maritime Museum people who did such a great job recreating the Seneca Chief. And I went up there, and the Seneca Indians did a beautiful, beautiful dance. And they planted a white pine, which is the tree of peace. And a rainbow came out that night. And I always thought, there's something to be said for this. You know, peacemaking, it's a good thing. Yes?
Could you tell us how it was determined where the canal was to be laid? Did that have anything to do with the Native Americans? They had a trail, I think.
Well, there was the Seneca Turnpike Trail, but not really. The fellow had done the engineering who was from, I'm forgetting where he was from. He originally laid it out, but they had to do it where that big piece in the middle was fairly flat. They had no idea if this thing would work. Okay, they had no idea. There were no engineers when they built that thing. RPI started because they needed engineers for the Erie Canal. They had no idea, and in the beginning when they started doing it, it kept sinking, the water kept coming through, and they were, what are we going to do here? And then they discovered this water impermeable cement out of the limestone in a little town not far from me called Chittenango. And that changed everything. Then they were able to build. So I really think it had more to do with the practical stuff than anything else.
And in Stars on the Water, so help me with this,
Okay.
they don't go to Oswego because because they didn't want to make it easy to get to Canada.
Right?
correct?
That's exactly right.
So instead of going up to Oswego and along the coast,
Right.
they stayed south.
They stayed
and kept
south.
going. Okay.
Yeah, that's very true.
That's a big piece of that question.
Ah, you know, it is. You're right. You're absolutely right. I forgot about that. You're right.
And I think Stars on the Water is the best book.
It's wonderful. It is.
We had a nice lecture from the Historic Society several weeks ago on the Oxbow, which is where the canal took a divergence, and he said it was because it was the path of least resistance.
Right.
Oftentimes, when they were constructing the path, the canal, they would hit a place where they just couldn't dig.
Couldn't do it.
So they went around it.
Yep. Yep. Have you ever seen those stump pullers they created? These giant, I mean, it's amazing, the ingenuity of the people who did this. Just amazing.
I promise not to ask you.
No, you're fine.
What do you know about the origin of this wonderful place at Victor where we live? I can never pronounce it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the only one I know other than maybe Mumford or something, but do you know the
I don't.
history of that?
I don't. I've been there. I don't know that history. I really don't. I wish I did.
Do you have any information about the Mohawk River and how, you know, the river and the canal, all that?
It was
have worked
treacherous.
together?
It was really treacherous. That was one of the most treacherous places because the Mohawk River got all those whirlpools in it. And they would just get a piece built of the canal along the same thing, and then the whirlpools would happen and sort of tear it apart. I know it was very, very treacherous and very, very difficult. And they probably had more breakdowns there than anywhere else. They had more deaths in Montezuma than anywhere else, but they probably had more breakdowns along the Mohawk River.
How many years did it take you to write this book?
3.5. And here's why. I thought I was done after 2.5. I had my beta readers like my friend Marianne, and I thought I was all set. And I gave it to my friend Greg to read. And he came down the hill with about 40 pages of notes. And I was like, I did not want to listen to him. I did not. But every single criticism he made was a good one. You don't have enough dialogue. You got to change this relationship. You got to do that. He was right. So I started over. So it took me 3.5 years instead of 2.5. But I'm glad I did. Yeah.
So had you visited a lot of the locales that are in your book before you wrote the book?
Oh,
or
yeah.
Okay, so were you inspired to continue to seek out other locales?
I
to
did.
add it to your-
I did. I did exactly
Okay.
that. In fact, I had been to many, many, many of them in all my life. I mean, I walked my son when he was a toddler along the canal. You know what I mean? I knew the canal. But then when I started to write the book, there were some places I'd never been to. So I'd make an Airbnb reservation and just go and write for a couple days and that kind of thing, just to get the feel.
So that 3.5 years wasn't all at a desk?
No. It was COVID. See, that was the other thing. You know, I was like, my friend, COVID had just started. My friend Kathy Rosito was on the board of The View up in Old Forge, which is like an artsy place. And like everybody else, everybody was panicked. How are we going to keep our nonprofits alive during COVID? So she sent out this thing to all of her friends and said, sign up for a course. I don't care what it is. Just sign up for something. And I signed up for a writing course. I've probably taken 20 of them in my life. And lucky me, the teacher was a guy named David Hazard. And he gave me a way to begin my book. And he ended up being my coach. And I'm so grateful for that. And I'll just share what he taught me in case any of you ever want to write a book. This is what he told me. He said, you get a big flip chart and you get 3 different colors of Post-it notes. And across the top, you put the years you want to cover. For me, that was like 1830 to 1865. And do those in blue. So, okay. Next line down, he said, put the big things that you know you want to cover in your book. I knew I wanted to cover the Fugitive Slave Law Convention. I knew I wanted to cover the opening of the Civil War, and blah, blah, blah. Put those on. And they said, make those yellow, and then for your bottom one, do them pink, and make them how you want your protagonist, in my case it was Aileen O'Malley, to change. And that did it for me, because I went, that's right, we don't stay the same. We're not the same people we were 20, right? And then he said, take a slice and start writing. So 1830, blah, blah, blah. Aileen is sort of imperious and closed-minded, right? You know, and that's what I did. I started taking a slice at a time. I'm so grateful to him because I couldn't get started before that. I needed a linear approach, I guess. Yeah. Yes?
So you're self-published. What's involved with that? I mean, it's one thing to write, but then to get it out there.
It's a good question, Peter. Everybody dreams they're going to get a publisher, right? So what they tell you have to do is you have to try and get an agent. So you write about 1 million letters, okay? And they don't even write you back, okay? I don't want to sound too negative, but if you've got 40,000 followers on Facebook, you might get a publisher, all right? But it's all social media now. And if you don't have influencers and that kind of thing, it's really hard to get noticed. So because it took me an extra year, the 200th anniversary of the canal was coming up, and I wanted to be done for that. So that's why I self-published. And then self-publishing for me was like, shoot me in the head. I am terrible with technology. I had a secretary all my life. I can't make my phone work since they downloaded the new software. I go out of my mind with this stuff. And if you're 35 and you know how to do software it's probably not that big a deal to self-publish. But me, oh my God. So I had to hire people, to do lots and lots of things for me, including page design and this and that and the other thing. And then you have to call and you have to get all the permissions for the art you use. And you got to get your Library of Congress number, and you got to there's so much detail involved in this. It wasn't easy, Peter. It wasn't easy at all for me. I think it would be much easier for someone who is facile with technology. Yeah.
I happen to know that you're out in the communities. I mean, you've been to Fairport, I don't know how many times.
Yeah.
So you're self-promoting it yourself, and that's appreciated.
I've sold 1,850 books. And that's because I've been going around meeting with people like you. And quite frankly, Marianne's heard me say this, during COVID, the rotten national politics, no matter what side you're on, it's rotten, right? And I had some health problems last year. The book has kept me going because I get to meet with people like you. And you know what? Historians and librarians are the nicest people in the world. They really are. You can't leave a place like this feeling negative. You look at the faces here. I mean, it's such a good thing. So that's what I've done, Peter. I've sort of kept my spirits up and sold my book at the same time.
Do you have enough so we can all sign your books?
I do. I have some here, and they're $20. I'm not doing credit cards because I told you how I am with technology. It takes me about 20 minutes to process something on Square. But if you don't have cash and you want to just send me a check, I'll just give you my address, and I'll trust you, because librarians and historians are also the most trustworthy people in the world, and I have learned that. So, anything else?
Do you have a website that tells you when you will be speaking?
Yes, I have a Facebook page, Marilyn Higgins Author, and I also have a website, MarilynHigginsAuthor.com. Yeah. So, thanks.
Is there going to be a sequel?
Now, I just decided I'm not going to, because I'm 74. I don't have 3.5, 4.5 more years. But if I did, it would be Aileen and Harriet Tubman as spies in the Civil War. We'll see. Yeah.
Sounds like a winner.
So thank you, everyone. It's so nice to be here. Thank you. Happy to sign a book for you.
All right.